Hello, everyone. It's 1 p.m. Eastern, and that means it's time to begin our 89th CoCoRaHS WxTalk Webinar. A very warm welcome to all of you joining us today. I'm your host, meteorologist Henry Regis. Running the technical side of our program is our very own Noah Newman. We're coming to you live from the Colorado Climate Center here in Fort Collins, Colorado. All of our WxTalk webinars are sponsored by the generous donations from listeners just like you. Well, for today's webinar, we'll focus on the question, what does it take to become a meteorologist? And well, I certainly know that one. That's a question I sure had back during my high school days with my guidance counselor. Didn't really know how to answer that one. But our two guests today will be able to guide you through this question in the next hour, not couple of hours. We're only going to go for an hour. And remember, it's never too late, no matter your age, to follow your dream. So if you have an interest in becoming a meteorologist, this is for you. Our special guests today are Victor Gensini, a graduate of the University of Georgia, and Dave Changnon, who graduated from our very own Colorado State University. Their connection, well, that's Northern Illinois University, where Victor is currently a professor and Dave is now a professor emeritus. Let's give a big CoCoRaHS welcome to Victor and Dave. It's great having both of you with us today.
Thank you so much, Henry. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Is that okay?
That's fine. And, as we start off the program, we always like to ask our guests this question, and I'm sure people will find it interesting. How did each of you guys become interested in weather? Was there a single event? What both Dave and Victor, what was the impetus?
Dave, I'll let you go first.
Mine was the incredible winters of the late 1970s when I was in high school. I grew up in central Illinois, and I was just amazed by the amount of snow and severe weather we had. And that's really what keyed my interest into meteorology and climatology at that point in time.
Yeah, for me, it was a very particular event, April 20th, 2004. I was kind of a high school student interested in science and math, thought my path would be engineering. And I remember going to my guidance counselor, and the day after that event, it was a tornado event across central Illinois, telling my guidance counselor that I was switching my major, and I started looking for meteorology programs in the state of Illinois, which led me, ironically, to Dave Changnon, who was at Northern Illinois University at the time. Obviously made a connection, and the rest is history. But now, as Henry, you sort of alluded to, Dave has passed me the torch in terms of academic advising at NIU, but that's sort of how I started my journey in meteorology.
Well, thanks, guys. And we'll come back to you with our questions after your presentation. So take it away.
All right, excellent. So I think some of the goals maybe today, we'll start with kind of an overview. And Dave, I'll take this, but feel free to jump in. Dave and I are going to be tag teaming this presentation today, and that's for good reason. We cover a long kind of historical timeline of advising meteorology students at Northern Illinois, and also watching the profession of meteorology unfold over the last 30 plus years. And so we have some unique perspectives along that timeline of kind of what it takes, what the most successful students, kind of their attributes, what they've explored throughout their tenure of coming through the academy. But really just are here to answer questions and hopefully give you some useful tips to help you on your journey, regardless of whether you're a high school student getting ready to come into atmospheric science programs, or somebody coming back for a secondary master's degree in something like atmospheric science or meteorology. So I hope you find this informative, and we're going to do our best to try to condense our 30 plus years of knowledge in this space in a 1 hour webinar. So we're going to cover as much as we can. All right. So we'll start with coursework. And Dave, if you want to talk a little bit about high school courses that generally folks should be preparing for, that'd be great.
Victor, thank you. Yeah, my thoughts are is if you're somehow 18 years or younger and you're really considering meteorology as a potential future career for yourself, some things that I would suggest as you march along through your middle school and high school is one, take as much math as you can possibly fit in. One of the things that I think it surprises a lot of students when they get to college is how much math is required. So it's imperative to me that if you can get into math courses and stay in that track, sort of a pre-college track, that's important. Otherwise, I would take a lot of science, specifically get a chemistry course in and a physics course in high school. That would be useful, if not more. We also really impress upon you to think about taking communication courses and English courses. Your ability to communicate in writing and speaking is really important. And finally, something that's really evolved in the last 40 years in the field is the increasing demand for great technical skills. The computing skills is really key to I think the development of a meteorologist these days.
Dave, what do you say to those students who come into our offices and are afraid of the math or have difficulty in the calculus courses?
I think at some level, no one's ever going to come back and ask you what your grade was in a calculus course or differential equations or something like that. What you're really wanting to look at math as a tool for you to understand what's really pretty complex issues that are associated with meteorology, how the atmosphere works and such requires the ability to use these tools. You don't have to, the idea that you have to be an A math student is not key. The really key is that you can use the math in the degree. And that's how I really see it.
Dave, let me ask you a quick question here. What about geography? So for, you work with a lot of maps and stuff like that. Would it be good for students to know their states, their kind of locations and stuff like that?
Well, Henry, that's a great question. At some level, we make assumptions that students get some of that somewhere along the line. But I'd be the first one to say that if you have the chance to take a geography course, again, in middle school or high school, it's worthwhile understanding the world, not just the United States. I think sometimes we zero in on the United States, but understanding the world, because the atmosphere, understanding the atmosphere across our planet really requires you to understand the changes in latitude. And so, yes, you're right. Geography is a very important part to this.
Yeah, I will second the computer skills that Dave mentioned. Right now, the language of choice that people ask for, like, okay, you say computing, but what language should I focus on? There's no really right or wrong answer to that. Right now, Python is very popular in the atmospheric sciences, especially in the academy. But as you go into numerical modeling, languages like Fortran and C++ are still widely used. I think it's more important to learn the syntax, the kind of understanding of what a loop is, what a function is.
Right.
How do you set a variable? Those are things that are still important and are cross language, sort of language agnostic. And it's more important, I think, to just learn a language good and be proficient in any language, and then that will carry over, to some of these newer languages like Python. So, okay, we'll move on to the next slide here. I have Dave slided for this one as well too. Dave advised me as an undergraduate student, and I think Dave mentioned the importance of critical thinking and problem solving and communication. Dave, talk a little bit about what you do or what you did and what you passed to me when a student comes into your office and says, I'm interested in meteorology. What does my kind of, course plan look like?
Well, that's a great question, Victor. I think that the issue is, in my mind, as you begin to think about where you want to take courses or what kind of courses you want to take, is that in a sense, what we're trying to achieve with those courses is your ability to work in groups, in essence of communication. But important is to think about how meteorology and the knowledge of atmospheric sciences can be used to solve problems even beyond our own field, whether it's in hydrology or in fields with in the private sector, whether it's energy or insurance. It's this broader ability to take your skills, both critical and technical and communication, and be able to apply them to a lot of different issues. And so we want the student, I think, to feel like they're they're developing a diverse set of skills that can potentially be applied in many different environments. And that's important because I think at some level, people sort of view that all they're going to potentially do when they graduate with a degree in meteorology is go out and forecast. A lot of students will, but we want to sit there and say, how do we develop forecasts that are going to be useful for different audiences? And so that's, I think, part of what I would want to have a discussion with you or any student about in that sense, is that you're realizing that there's a much broader opportunity to do things in meteorology than what we typically think of as either broadcast or forecasting for the National Weather Service.
Yeah, you're so right. Obviously, we have those students that come into our offices and say, you know, I'm very interested in broadcast meteorology. It's very easy to put them into communications classes and writing classes and now like digital content creation classes. But the reality is the skill of communication here that's at that bottom piece is something that is important regardless of the sector that you're going into, especially in meteorology. You're going to have to communicate. If you're a weather service forecaster, through area forecast discussions. Of course, that's a little bit more technical writing, but communicating right to your audience. Maybe you're giving a spotter training seminar. Maybe you're in the private sector and you're tasked with being a team lead and communicating your findings to other folks throughout the company, or at least even demonstrating the value of what you do as a meteorologist. And I think many times in the forecast process, we go through that kind of analyzing the atmosphere, diagnosing, making a forecast. But it's that final piece, right, of communicating the forecast to the end user and stakeholder that really takes that forecast across the finish line. And it is a really important kind of soft skill that that students can use to set themselves apart as they start looking for jobs in the field. So, okay, Dave, why don't you take this one too? You've seen every activity under the sun when it comes to meteorology, whether it's things like CoCoRaHS, obviously very, very important, or you know, becoming a Skywarn spotter. So tell us a little bit about those activities and how they set students apart.
Well, again, when we built this talk, you know, a lot of times I'm thinking about someone who's 10 years old or 12 or 15, but these kind of activities can go for any age group, which is important. I think that the key is, if you have an interest in anything, you want to sort of dive in. I used to say to students who'd come into my office, it's sort of like being on a dock in late May or early June up in Wisconsin, and you don't put your foot in the water, you just dive in. And at some level, there are so many great opportunities for meteorologists or people who are interested in meteorology and atmospheric sciences to get into the lake and really see if you really want to do this. And these are all opportunities here, whether it, again, you know, go to a National Weather Service office or become a CoCoRaHS observer in your community. The idea is you just want to get aware of what the opportunities are. And again, this is just a taste, but these are activities that most of us have done if we're interested in meteorology, for sure.
Yeah, I've actually seen high school students attend annual meetings of the American Meteorological Society. That's what that AMS acronym stands at the bottom, and also the National Weather Association. Those are our two umbrella kind of professional organizations. Like if you were in the medical field, you would be a part of the American Medical Association, right? Or the American Mathematical Society. For meteorology, it's really the American Meteorological Society, the AMS, and also our sister organization, the National Weather Association. Those two professional organizations really oversee a majority of the professional activities that meteorologists do.
And just to tie on to what you said, Victor, which is great, is that those associations have scholarships and fellowships and opportunities for students as they plug through high school and prepare for college, if you know, to get some money to help offset the costs of college. So it's really important to use those, you bet.
And as somebody who sits, just really quickly, as somebody who sits on those panels to help decide scholarships, I can tell you that we don't get enough applicants. There's a lot more free money out there than in many cases than there are applicants for those. So if you are an interested student, regardless of your career, you can sometimes you'll qualify for different scholarships depending on kind of where you are in your life's journey.
Yeah.
Those can be very, very valuable ways to kind of offset the cost of getting education. I don't know if Henry was about to jump in with a
Yeah,
question.
I was going to mention one thing that, I always learned was that don't be afraid to go up and ask questions to some of the giants in the field that you may meet at some of these conferences. A lot of times they're very humbled and thrilled that, wow, a high school student or a college student would actually come and want to know about this stuff. And so they are approachable. And I know it's just don't be shy in doing that.
Agreed.
Yeah, don't be shy. And I get lots of emails from high school students, just inquiring about not just our program at NIU, but also, what it takes to be a meteorologist. And I think many of us in this field have, are standing on the shoulders of people like Dave and other giants in our field to really pass the baton and help out the next generation of scientists. So don't be afraid to reach out to us and ask us questions, regardless of how silly you might think they are. We were all students at one point. And so, it really is our job to help you navigate the storm, so to speak. Okay. All right. Let's move on with making that college decision, because I get a lot of questions about, what type of program should I choose? How do I know that it's right for me? Is the program certified? There are a lot of things to think about when you're sitting down and making that final decision of where to apply. And there is really no one size fits all model here. I want to be very clear about that. Departments are unique across the board. I would really just suggest that you do some homework. You do some homework by identifying programs through the AMS website. Most of the programs out there that offer a BS in meteorology will fit what's called the GS 1340 requirement. The GS 1340 requirement is simply just saying this particular program, this particular degree meets the requirements for a meteorologist designation in the eyes of the federal government. And the reason that that's important is if you ever want to go into a job for example, within NOAA or the National Weather Service, when human resources starts looking at your transcript, if they don't see those required courses there in your transcript, you will not be eligible for those meteorology positions. Again, most institutions in the United States that offer a BS in meteorology do have that certification or that kind of byline, right, of GS 1340 is met, but not all. And it's worth reaching out to these institutions to make sure that their programs do that. I can't also understate the importance of visiting. Go visit, meet the faculty, meet the students that you're going to be around, and really those will make or break your decision to go somewhere. I can attest to the fact that when I went to NIU and met Dave, that was it. I sealed the deal because you meet the faculty that are going to be teaching or at least potentially teaching your classes. And that's why that bottom bullet point there, I say focus on faculty in your program, not necessarily the logo or the location. I know there are, some people really want to get out of the cold here in the Midwest and they want to go to a program, in somewhere in the Southeast or in Florida to get away from the snow. There are obviously other considerations, but really when you go to college and make that decision, you are making a decision to invest in yourself, right? To invest in your time and your resources, not only in your time, but financially, right? You're making a financial investment to get this degree. And because of that, you really need to focus on the quality of the program. Go look and see where their alumni are working right now. That's a really great way to understand as well. Of course, there's financial considerations as well too. You don't want to break the bank and take on a second or third mortgage when you're trying to pay for college. But that's where things like scholarships and financial aid can help offset. Dave, I don't know if you have anything additional to add there.
I think you covered it real well. I agree with you on the idea that every program's different, and you want to, while you visit, take a look at the labs, take a look at the resources that exist within the department or within the program being supported by a department. And again, you'll find a fit. I think the important thing is at some level, it's about sometimes it's about a job, sometimes it's about school. You'll find a place where you look at somebody, you listen to them, and you walk away and say, this is really what I'm looking for. And that's important.
Yeah, great point. So let's say you narrow down a couple programs. The first person you'll probably be put in contact with when you contact one of these departments or universities regarding their meteorology program is going to be somebody like me, who would likely be the undergraduate advisor for the meteorology program. And there's a couple of key things, to make sure that you ask. Of course, one is that line that we just mentioned, does your program meet the GS 1340 requirements or the federal standards? And again, most of the times that's going to be yes. But I would do exactly what Dave just mentioned, and that's prod a little bit into the strengths of the department. Many advisors are going to be very transparent with you and say, this is what we do really well. This is what we don't have compared to some other programs. At the end of the day, you have to realize that a BS in meteorology is a BS in meteorology, whether you get it from Northern Illinois, whether you get it from Oklahoma or Penn State or Iowa State or whoever, right? At the end of the day, the degree is the degree. And people are not going to focus on the logo or the location, as I mentioned earlier. It's going to be more about the fact that you completed the degree. Now, we're going to talk about later what you can do to kind of add to that and put more tools in your tool belt, so to speak. But ask questions to the faculty. If you see other graduate students in the department while you're visiting, ask them questions. What do you think your department specializes in? What are you good at? What kind of research do the faculty do? I think that's a really important question as well. A lot of times the emphases of the individual faculty will reflect in kind of the broader overall department strengths in terms of what they tend to focus on. And those are really important things, I think, to ask during that time. The only other thing I would say is don't be afraid to ask about things like, can I double major? Can I get a minor in computer science? Can I get a minor in this or that? What opportunities do you have for me as an on-camera, somebody who wants to be an on-camera meteorologist? Just kind of, again, I think of our program at NIU as very boutique, right? We are very specialized in applied meteorology and climatology. We've been that way since Dave started. Really, it was helped shape the kind of vision and mission of our particular emphases for research. Every department's going to be a little bit different. And then the other final thing that I would just emphasize is ask who generally teaches the upper level courses. Many programs have graduate students actually teach the upper level courses, where other universities will actually have faculty teach those upper level elective courses in meteorology. And the reason that is sort of important is that the larger research universities are doing just that. They're kind of focusing on research and they're maybe not focused as heavily on teaching. That's, again, but your mileage may vary there across program. And so, reach out and ask these academic advisors of really, kind of just try to get a good feel for if that program is going to be a good fit for you. Some people really like the large programs and they like to be sitting in lecture halls of hundreds of students. Other people like a little bit more personal feel where the faculty are going to know your name and the graduate students in the program is of a manageable size where everybody's going to kind of know everybody. So it's really, that's where I come back and say that this is not a one size fits all model. Yep. Dave, any other thoughts there?
No, I totally agree with you. I think the key is looking for ways to add value to your academic process.
Yeah. And then final, I'll just tack on one more slide here of these visits. Why are they so important? Try to make time. Many high school students now, I'm seeing that high schools are giving students the opportunity to take a college visit day. That's great. If you have to do it over spring break or over summer, that's fine too. And even if you can't visit in person, there are opportunities now, right, where you can set up a time with me and I can FaceTime with you and walk you around our department and show you some of the resources in a virtual manner. So there are opportunities, even if you can't step foot on our campus, to try to get a better kind of feel for what the program is going to be like. Ask about things like research opportunities. Are any students in your program doing faculty-led research right now? In many cases, the answer will be yes. And that is something that if you're going to go down a path of, pursuing a master's eventually, or maybe even a PhD, you want to have those kind of opportunities in your department so that you can get your feet wet when it comes to things like a research. Internships. Those are things that you're going to probably progress towards as you begin to build your portfolio and your career. But you can simply ask, like, how many students generally do internships in your program? And we'll be very honest with you to tell you, oh yeah, we got 4 or 5 students right now doing this and that. And we got some students at Argonne National Lab and this and that. And that'll kind of give you a good feel for opportunity. And then there are even study abroad opportunities. We've had at least one student do this in the past, where we can kind of pair you up with another academic institution overseas, where you can go and perform summer research and then come back. Really, I think at the end of the day, Dave and I would both tell you this: use that visit to try to understand if the program is a good fit for you. That's the most important thing. You can have the fanciest looking pair of sneakers in the world, but if they're 2 sizes too small, it's not going to be a very pleasant 4 years at university. Okay, let's see. Other things. This is something, I say this because you're going to ask this maybe to all programs, but this is something I think that if you take a step back and look at where meteorology is heading, not only where it's heading, but kind of where we're at. We're on this derivative of the curve right now. We're coming over the hump, so to speak. But don't be afraid to ask us about the prospects for job opportunities. Again, a good academic advisor is going to be very transparent with you. I'm going to use that word a lot, is transparency. They're going to tell you, this is where the jobs are growing. This is where the jobs are not growing. These are the skill sets that are in demand, and these are the skill sets that are perhaps useful, but not highly sought after by employers. Many program graduates are going to be doing things in the federal government. It is one of the largest employers of meteorologists in the United States, but there are also state and local agencies that hire meteorologists, things like air quality monitoring, right? Forensic meteorology. Some of you may decide to end up going to graduate school, and that is not something that personally was even on my radar when I stepped foot in Dave Chagnon's office so many years ago. So those, be very clear with your academic advisor as to your areas of interest, or maybe even most importantly, things that don't interest you. Because as a young student walking into an office, you may not have an idea of all the possible things that are out there in regard to meteorology, but you might walk in one day and say, Dave, I know that I don't want to forecast. I know that I don't want to be on TV. Like, that helps us kind of, okay, well, we can cross that off. We can cross this off. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about some of these other, pathways? And, be clear and be, don't be afraid to speak up and say, I'm very interested in winter weather, or I'm very interested in forensic meteorology. That will help us when we start to look at your potential opportunities for elective classes, to put you in things that, I think are going to benefit you more based on your kind of niche area that you may want to pursue in atmospheric science. Okay, and I think this is my final last slide, but Dave knows this all too well, is before you sign the dotted line, so to speak, don't forget about cost. I think we sort of, I think a lot of us just kind of skim this under the rug as to, well, it's an investment and we'll figure out how to pay for it. If you find yourself in a situation where that number is overwhelming, please know that there are ways to offset that number, whether it's through scholarships, taking perhaps a cheaper route. And I'm the person who did this. The second bullet point there, community college 2+2. I decided to do that because financially it was smarter for me to do that. And as a first generation college student that had no kind of understanding of what the landscape of higher education was or what it looked like, that was a way for me to complete all of my general education requirements and then move on to NIU to kind of polish off and take all the meteorology classes. So there are ways, and of course, we start talking about name and logo. Some of those locations and logos are very expensive, especially if you decide to go out of state. And that's okay. Just make sure that you know that you are taking on an additional financial burden. And at the end of the day, a BS in meteorology is a BS in meteorology. You got to make sure that it's a good fit more than anything else. Dave, anything to add there?
No, I think it, as you say, I think you need to be willing to be honest with yourself. I mean, the money part of school or education is an impressive part to the decision. And you have to be honest with where you are and the people who are making those decisions, your parents, others, and sit there and say, hey, listen, is this something we can afford, or how do we chip away at it a different way? I think going into that meeting with the advisor and saying, hey, are there scholarships that your institution provides? You'd be surprised. Like Victor mentioned earlier, there's a lot of AMS money that never gets used. Same way at the university level, there are a lot of scholarships within sometimes even in the department that are available. And if you don't ask, you don't know. And part of I never feel guilty about asking, because in some level, there are opportunities to minimize that cost or to decrease it at some level. Yes.
Yeah, excellent point. Okay. All right, Dave, we'll transition to you.
Okay.
Now, once you're working on your degree, what to do? We have a lot of students, by the way, that are trying to work 40-hour-a-week jobs and also complete a degree in meteorology because of this previous slide, right? Because of this financial burden that they're taking on. So let's talk a little bit about, now that you've made that decision, what's next?
The thing that Victor pointed out in the whole process of preparing for this decision of where you go for your college education is really critical, because then when you get there, you got to realize that there are about 500 to 1,000 students that are seeking a BS degree in meteorology at any given time. So from my perspective, one of the things you want to achieve while you're there is creating what I call a portfolio. And part of what I mean by portfolio is this idea of how do you differentiate yourself from even students within that one program that you're in at whatever institution, because at some level you want to stand out. For other words to say is to be unique. And so developing a portfolio of activities, whether it's internships or you're doing a mentored research project with a faculty member, or you're doing a study abroad or whatever, or you're getting certificates and whether it's in GIS, geographic information systems, or computer sciences or mathematics, those are things you want to start thinking about as you process your way through that educational journey. Any other thoughts, Victor?
No, you hit the nail on the head. I think we're going to talk about this more, I think, when it comes up to, again, putting additional tools in your tool belt to help you stand out. But one of my pieces of advice to students is kind of like, look around the room, and in terms of job opportunities in the field, you really kind of have to set yourself apart and be better than half. You kind of have to be in that upper 50%. To make sure that you're going to solidify yourself a career in atmospheric science. There are lots and lots and lots of careers out there that don't say meteorologist as the title, but you do a lot of meteorology. It might be data analytics or climate variability and analytics or something. There's a lot of really new data scientist positions that are coming online that do a lot with atmospheric science. And so we'll talk about that later and how to be creative. But let's first talk about these first steps. I think meeting with the advisor, we kind of already talked about, but Dave, why don't you tell a little story about these 4-year plans that you develop? And this is certainly something that I continue to do, although I do it in a virtual spreadsheet now versus on a yellow piece of paper. But talk about how these plans are important and how they can change as a student moves through that academic life cycle.
Well, again, part of my goal was, and Victor, I don't know how much I stated it up front with you or anybody at any of the students, but is to minimize your time in the 4-year program. One is the reason why I always sat there and like to come up with what I call a 4-year academic roadmap for students or freshmen coming into the institution was to sit there and say, yes, you can do this in 4 years. because I think at some level, to minimize costs, you want to sit there and say there's ways to do it. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not, like you mentioned, flexibility in the courses and when you take them and so forth. But because, as you mentioned, really, we talked about really early in this program, there's a lot of math and science requirements within meteorology that are part of the GS 1340, the federal requirements. You really want to start taking those early. You have what I call a math ladder. And so if you don't get on that math ladder right away, you can add a number of a lot of time to your program if you're not careful. And so that math ladder, as I like to refer to it, where you take Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3, then differential equations, those are courses that are difficult. I'm not gonna lie about that, but in essence, you want to start thinking about how you get them in. So it's really important. And then the other effort of this is, like you said, some students are working to survive the cost of education, but you also want to identify activities that you want to get involved with. Again, whether it's mentored research or an internship at some point in time, again, typically in the junior, senior year. But those are activities that you really want to identify where they can occur in that academic program, because at some level, you got to be organized. The student has to take some ownership of this and be organized, I think, to see it through.
And sometimes those activities won't be during the academic year. They'll be in the summer.
Right.
They could be research opportunities, lots and lots and lots of research opportunities every summer for juniors and graduating seniors. So, you can ask those questions and discuss about things like, you'll hear the term a lot, or the sequence of words, research experience for undergraduates. There are anywhere from 20 to 30 of these programs every summer that are in atmospheric and climate science. And they are great opportunities for students to kind of do some additional activity or research outside of the classroom. So I totally agree with the math ladder. And the reason that it's so important is that the higher that you start on the math ladder, the more kind of freedom you have during your junior and senior year to take some of these elective classes, whether it's doing some undergraduate research or doing an internship. It doesn't mean you can't come in as a freshman and be in, trigonometry or pre-calculus. That is actually very common. It's just that generally we really like to see students, by the time they've kind of gotten to the junior year, have Calculus 2 finished. If you have Calculus 2 finished by the end of your sophomore year going into your junior year, you're really kind of in a great spot in that math ladder in terms of finishing up in two more years, 4 additional semesters after you do that. So again, every program is going to be a little bit different, but Dave's absolutely right when we talk about this idea of a math ladder. Okay, I want to spend a little bit.
Victor, really quick, this is Noah with headquarters. Just a quick question on that. Can that field research during the summer, could that include storm chasing?
It could, but the storm chasing would generally have to be facilitated by some sort of field campaign. So for example, we actually have a proposal into the National Science Foundation right now to study hail. And yeah, what are you going to do studying hail? We're going to go out and search for hailstorms and put down hail pads and instrumentation. So there might be more like, let's call it more organized, thunderstorm laboratory, not necessarily like storm chasing as you would think of it in like the movie Twister or some other, Hollywood rendition. But there are opportunities for field work, and it's not just in storm chasing. It might be, I've had students last summer at Argonne National Lab that were doing a whole bunch of instrumentation field work, setting up micronets of instruments around downtown Chicago. So it doesn't have to be storm chasing. There are opportunities for field work, but it could include thunderstorms and things like storm chasing if the academic faculty at that institution are proposing science questions and field campaigns around those types of phenomena. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and this is Henry. I've got one other thing to add to that too, is don't be afraid to do grunt work. When it comes to this stuff, because one of the important things I found through my career was making connections with people. So you may be the guy tagging along stuff for a professor or somebody else you meet in the field, later on down the road, when it comes time for a job or just to get to know more or other things, those relationships that you make, even though you're not doing the premier experiment or whatever at that time, does get you known in the field. So
You got it. You got
And
it.
Henry, sort of to build off that, is that the key word is relationship.
right.
I think if I were someone who's sending a son to go to NIU to be a meteorology student, I would say to that individual, you want to have a relationship with Victor in a sense of as an advisor. Yes, he's going to sit down and help you figure out what courses to take, but you want to be meeting with this individual maybe infrequently, but like once or twice a semester, maybe even more, just to find out what's going on. Because a lot of times we will find out about an internship in North Dakota in early March, and maybe we'll put it out to the student chat for the AMS. But the key is that if you're having this dialogue, frequent dialogue with an advisor, that person's going to know and think about you when these opportunities come up. If you only go see an advisor when you're in trouble, academic trouble, or if there's or just when you absolutely have to, then you're missing an opportunity to develop this relationship that can really foster into something much greater.
You are so right. And to the comment about the grunt work, I'm paying 2 undergrads this semester to do data quality control for me, right?
Right.
And sometimes it's paid like this, but sometimes it's not. And I think this is where, we don't want to belabor this slide, but we've talked about this before, that Dave mentioned 500 to 1,000 students graduating in meteorology. You're all getting out with that nice shiny GS 1340. I have a BS in meteorology degree. I'm now a meteorologist. And then it becomes, now what, right? What sets you apart from the other 749 people? And that really is exactly what Dave just mentioned, is establishing relationships, building your professional network of people that may become your boss's boss, or colleagues down the road. And this absolutely requires being present. Dave has it at the bottom of this slide here. No matter what you do, paid or not, show up and give 120% effort, because we remember those students who did unpaid data quality control of going through Dave's old spreadsheets and figuring out the 100 snowstorms that impacted Minonk, Illinois. We remember those, right? We remember those students. We remember the impact, and we remember the effort that they showed. We know that that type of effort is going to translate into the workforce. And when it comes time to write those students recommendation letters or opportunities, those are the students that come to our mind immediately because they get involved. And I know everybody has different levels of comfort, right? But there's a time and a place for being shy. And when you get into your college degree and you're starting to become an expert in your field, now's not the time to be reserved. It's the time to ask questions and lean on those people, especially your faculty and graduate students, that are going to help get you to where you want to be in your career. So I say down there at the bottom, whatever you do to get involved, paid or not. I did several unpaid internships with the National Weather Service throughout my tenure, even though I have nothing to do with the National Weather Service right now. But you know what? I have hundreds of friends and colleagues now in the National Weather Service across the country that, oh, guess what? I proposed this field campaign based on hail. I went back and asked a lot of those people to help write support letters for this project. And I think it just underscores this idea of professional networking and relationship building. So very well said. Anything else from anybody before we move on? Okay.
Fantastic.
All right, very good. Dave, I'm gonna let you start this one. This is the separation of, really finding that job after you graduate. And I think one thing that a lot of students maybe miss here is that they say, okay, well, I've participated in the AMS chapter, I did this internship, and then they come tell me after graduation what they want to do. Like, that's a no-no, right? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think at some level, we have to stand back and say every student, every individual is on their own journey, one. And based on career interest that that student has or that individual has, that it sort of requires that individual to want to, again, take the initiative to get involved with potential internships or opportunities where they're going to learn outside of that academic four-year program potentially, and then extend that. It just, as Victor said before, that professional knowledge and that professional relationships that you begin to develop as a student with people that are outside of your own community are so valuable. You know, and I'm really one that would say that you need to get yourself generating this kind of portfolio. Now at the bottom, you can tell I'm getting to be pretty old, but I put the word resume and cover letter. These days, what you really want to have is this portfolio, this electronic portfolio that includes whether it's research papers or talks that you've given at school or projects that you've worked on with other individuals, things that can really, again, separate you from others that are in your program. And so, again, as you evolve as an individual in an academic environment, you want to look at ways, as Victor said, that make you different than the other people sitting in that senior dynamics course, atmospheric dynamics course, so that you can go on and be successful. And I think at some level, there's a lot to that, and I don't think I'm covering what Victor wanted. So Victor, if you want to comment back
No,
on
you
that.
did, and that is a perfect segue into the importance of an internship. Now, I will tell you, you're going to get difference of opinion here depending on programs,
Yeah.
but I cannot underscore the importance of doing an internship at some point throughout your academic career, even if it's just after you graduate. Internships offer you real world experience, and there's no substitute for that. I basically, this is not a requirement for the GS 1340, of course, but I always tell students that if you're serious about getting a job in the field, you do need to do an internship, and whether it's paid or unpaid. Because I think what that allows you to do is go into this workforce place and say, you know what, I just did a job shadow shift or an internship at the National Weather Service, and I did not like shift work. Well, that would have been great to know right before you applied for the National Weather Service position. So I think, you know, it may not be an internship in something that you are really passionate about, but it's still an internship, and it still allows you real world experience. It may be a research experience. It may be an internship that helps somebody, you know, create a new project or analyze some data. But it does give you another kind of line on your resume to say, I have some real world experience. I've worked with these people. You've obviously branched out now and created, you know, increased your web of professional network here. And, you know, I will say that the students that have gone through our program, the ones that have done internships often are the ones that have jobs kind of waiting for them when they get done, because they've established these contacts, they've established their utility and their ability to show value to that particular company or agency. And oftentimes they're graduating, either getting, you know, waiting for that job, they're graduating with the job in hand, or they're getting out and they're applying and finding jobs very quickly because they have this kind of edge experience of an internship. And I know, Dave, you facilitated so many internships for students throughout the years, whether that was with, for example, the recently retired Tom Skilling in Chicago, or internships at Argonne. What is your experience and perspective on the value of an internship? I just think they're invaluable.
I totally agree with you, Victor. I think at some level you hit on it earlier when you said, you know, when you earn that degree, all those 750 kids are going to earn that degree in that year, are going to have that piece of paper. And that's just sort of a minimum thing you want to walk out of an academic program with. In my mind, the other things that you're going to add are things that are whether it's an internship or you worked on a research project, but it's just this idea that you have other things that you can talk about. When you sit down and interview with somebody, they're going to know you have this degree in meteorology. What else is there to you that, again, makes you unique? And I think, again, that's how you sort of want to look at your opportunities in an academic program is what's going to set me aside. And that's important.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, we got about 10 minutes left and we still have a few slides. So let's move on into graduate school. This is something that, of course, if you haven't completed a BS degree in meteorology yet, you may not even be thinking about this. It certainly wasn't on my radar when I stepped foot into Dave's office to apply for, the program at NIU. But as you progress through your career, what you'll find is that some opportunities, especially in the research world, do require advanced degrees, whether that's a master's degree or a PhD. Again, your mileage may vary depending on specifically the job title or position that you're interested in here. I will say that this is another situation where you don't want to focus on a logo or a location, although the location might be a little bit easier here. I want to go skiing during my graduate degree, or I want to spend time in Florida. Here, the most important thing for graduate school is to find an advisor. Find somebody after you kind of go through, you get your degree. Oh, I'm really interested in lightning research. Well, don't apply to NIU because we don't have anybody here that's an expert in lightning, right? So there are going to be certain programs that are kind of on your radar, so to speak, because of the faculty that are there, because those are the ones that are going to be guiding you in this graduate school. GRE is important, although we don't require it anymore. More and more institutions are not requiring the GRE due to the financial costs associated with that. But this is another situation where, just like the bachelor's degree, you want to visit the institution, meet your advisor, meet the advisor's graduate students to get a feel for kind of how they advise students. And, just, I guess for now, put in the back of your mind that a BS degree in meteorology doesn't have to be the end. A lot of students will get done with their bachelor's degree and be like, wow, I know so much new information. I feel really comfortable as a meteorologist, but there's also so much that I don't know in these specific niche areas that maybe I want to pursue in graduate school. Any
So
thoughts
Victor,
there?
when you think back to when you were an undergrad, you had to have some set of experiences or activities that must have triggered the potential interest in graduate school. What were a couple of those, or do you remember?
Yeah, you got it. The thing that really, I think, took my career path, I was very interested in working for the National Weather Service. I really wanted to do forecasting, specifically convective storms. And I participated in one of these research experiences for undergraduates during a summer, one of these summer internship style opportunities. And I came back from that. I will be very honest. I came back from that opportunity and I said, I want to pursue a career in research. And I didn't know at the time that that meant going all the way through PhD, but I knew that it meant at least doing a master's degree. I wanted to do some degree of research. And what was so exciting for me at the time is that I didn't realize that you could, partake in a career where you tried to create new knowledge. Like, as a first generation college student, that just wasn't something that I was aware of. And these type of opportunities, whether they're internships, whether they're research experiences, they give you just that. They give you experience. And those experiences are sometimes good and sometimes bad. Sometimes they allow you to understand, hey, this is not something that I want to do. But oftentimes there are opportunities for you to really grow as a meteorologist, but also as a professional. And you take those opportunities and you run with them. And, a lot of times these types of opportunities, I see students in our own program now that are kind of doing the same thing. They go through these experiences and they're like, how do I get more of this, right? How do I take this to the next level? And the next level beyond BS, right, is of course a master's degree. Any other thoughts? I think we can probably move on in the interest of time. But if there are questions about graduate opportunities, we'll make sure to cover those, because then there's the PhD right beyond the master's degree that we can talk about too. But yeah, I will say this because I think we've all experienced this. Anybody who goes through a 4-year degree, regardless of the field, wow, those 4 years go by super fast. And when, the first time you set foot in your advisor's office to the time you walk across the stage to get your diploma, you'll feel like, it was just yesterday, so to speak. And I think this is where all of us, Dave mentioned the idea that it's never a linear path from
Yeah.
getting from a BS in meteorology to professor emeritus at NIU. It's not a linear path. It's not a linear path for any of us, and there will be change, especially if you
Yeah.
work in certain sectors of meteorology. There's a lot more change in some sectors than there is for me in an academic, right? I have a very clear kind of like ladder. But sometimes you'll be changing jobs, you'll be changing professions. You'll want to go back to school to get a computer science degree on top of your meteorology degree. And so we always say kind of, the journey is never an end when you walk across that stage. And it's really about adjusting to really what you want to do with your career thereafter. And it can be a multitude of things that you haven't even thought of when you're walking across that stage. And I talked to so many of our alumni who thought, oh, I never thought I would be doing, insurance. I never thought I would be doing catastrophe modeling. I never thought I would be, leading CoCoRaHS or whatever it is. Those are just things that, with the right professional network, those opportunities come along. And the more likely you'll be successful in graduation if you build those professional networks. Yeah.
Great.
I don't know if you have anything there, Dave, but yeah,
No,
we just say that
you
4
hit it.
years,
You
just
hit it,
like
man.
just like 1 hour goes pretty quickly, so do those 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk just a little bit about preparation for graduation and beyond. This is one of those things that I mentioned earlier, so I'm not going to belabor this point, but don't be afraid when we start talking about these additional tools in your tool belt. Go for a minor, go for a double major, go for a certificate, especially if you're coming in a little bit higher on that math ladder and you have a little bit of freedom in your junior and senior year. Go for these academic extra credentials, because what they demonstrate is that you've done a little bit extra compared to the person sitting next to you, that you may have a little bit of extra experience, or, oh, Python really well, you did a computer science minor. Maybe we're going to put you over here as this kind of team lead for this project that we have that focuses specifically on programming. So prepare. You're already doing that, by the way, by attending this webinar. Regardless of where you're at in your career, even if you're thinking about coming back for a degree in meteorology, prepare and read about these programs and do your homework.
Right.
That I think is one of the most important things that I could possibly say.
And
Okay.
guys, don't worry about going a little long on this. We're okay with that. So take
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure that we,
Yep.
I
No,
know
we're good.
everybody's cognizant of their time, and
This is a very important webinar. We want to get the full.
This is well, I guess this is what I'd also say, tongue in cheek, is this is what professors tend to do. We tend to be a little bit long. we tend to profess. So
Yep.
I'm going to let Dave take this one just because he underscored the importance of this earlier, which is making connections, not just with your academic advisor, but with other faculty. Go ahead, Dave.
Again, I think the most important, there's some really great pictures on this slide. I really like the one knocking on the door. The reason why is I think there's a certain level of, especially with traditional undergraduate students, this fear of saying, gosh, I got to go see my advisor, or I want to go talk to one of the faculty about certain research projects. You got to get the will to knock on that door, and because what's inside of that office, or what's inside of that conversation that could occur in that office, are things that are just, I think, incredible. And I'm very, I would say, developing these relationships are critical for you to get a job in the field, or again, in a field that's associated with meteorology. So yes, I would say that getting in with your advisor and doing those kind of things are necessary for sure.
Yeah, wow, I was kind of one of those folks that was maybe not so afraid to knock on the door, but I have had students, that are very reluctant to come and speak, and they see their academic advisors and other faculty members publishing papers or being reported on in the news, and they seem kind of like these unapproachable, people that are up in an ivory tower somewhere that only communicate with other academics or other people with PhDs, and that just couldn't be further from the truth.
Right.
There are certainly scientists like that. We've all met them. But many of us, especially the ones who are the academic advisors, are here to help you. We're here to help shape your journey and guide you so that when you leave, well, I always say to students, when you leave the four walls, I think Dave, you say this too, when you leave the four walls of Davis Hall, that you're ready to tackle the opportunities and the challenges that are put in front of you. And they're really, regardless of your institution, there are no better people to make those connections with than the faculty. The faculty are the core of the university. They're the lifeblood of the university. They teach the classes, we do the advising, and we will eventually write your letters of recommendation someday. And you know, you're not going to get along with all faculty. You're not going to like all faculty's teaching styles. Everybody's different. That's what makes us human, right? But the important thing to really realize is that making good connections and relationships with those people within your own department, we know everybody in everybody else's department, right? The faculty at NIU know everybody at Iowa State, and everybody at Iowa State knows Illinois, and Illinois knows Colorado State, and Colorado State knows Oklahoma, and Oklahoma knows Penn State. We all know each other. We go to conferences, right? This is what we do as academics. We hang out at these conferences and we talk. And so, you know, positioning yourself and making relationships in your department has far wider reaching implications than you may think. When you're just sitting in that office and having those conversations to start with. So I think moral of the story here, and we've probably beaten this to a pulp, but make sure you meet with these faculty advisors and really establish a rapport and relationship with them, because they're going to certainly help you tremendously along your career route. Okay. I do want to spend a little bit of time on this. It is important, and we really kind of glossed over it earlier. Dave can certainly chime in here as a newly elected fellow of the AMS. But I'm going to start this off by basically saying, now is your opportunity, regardless of where you're at in your career, to join a professional organization. And I mentioned the AMS and the NWA earlier. There are obviously national chapters that you can join, the national kind of what we call umbrella chapter, but there are also local chapters. I'm not exactly sure what the local chapter scene looks like out on the Front Range, but we do have a local chapter here in Chicago, and there are local chapters kind of spread throughout the country. But if there's not a local chapter in your area, you can always just join the local or the national umbrella organization. We have regional meetings, national meetings. These are great opportunities for professional networking. You'll see people present a lot of great science. Really, it gives you an opportunity to participate, right? And become involved in these opportunities. There's opportunities to take leadership roles within these organizations. And really, to me, they reflect the fact that everybody that joins these societies are really lifelong learners and are interested in moving the needle forward within our respective organizations, whether that be on topics related to climate change, weather forecasting, cloud seeding, whatever it might be. There are specialty areas of these societies that focus on, you know, important and strategic topics that help shape, at the end of the day, public policy on things like weather and climate. You know, these professional organizations are established to help advocate in Washington, D.C. for things like scientific funding and shaping our, you know, strategic vision as a country for how we're going to tackle the important implications of climate change. And so being involved in these early and often is really, really important. And as Dave mentioned earlier, they are also societies that and associations that offer scholarship opportunities. So Dave, yeah, you've obviously been a part of AMS much longer than I have and have unique perspective, but I'd like to hear your thoughts a little bit about, you know, these societies and the role that they play.
The really interesting thing, Victor, is that they've critically become even more important for young meteorologists, young atmospheric scientists, because they've developed, especially the AMS, a whole career development side to them. They've funded individuals and parts of meetings where they really want to encourage young students and people outside, just graduated early in their careers, this dialogue And this is really critical because at some level, you're going to want to go and attend national meetings or even local meetings to find out what's going on. And there's been a lot of resources put toward this young career development activity. And so as someone who's interested in the field, I would really push you, that individual, to join one or both of these societies so that you become aware of the tools and the resources that are out there now for you and for all of us in the field. And I can't speak for Victor, but a lot of these things have developed in the last 15 to 20 years at a scale that wasn't there at all when I graduated with my degrees in the 1980s. So you use these resources; they're there for you, and I think that would help you a great deal as you move forward in your career.
Dave,
Yeah,
can I make a quick comment on the AMS?
Yeah, please do.
Yes.
So a quick story for you guys out there. When I was a junior in college, I was looking for some paper to write on, and I went to the recycling bin, pulled out a piece of paper, and on the back was an advertisement for looking for student volunteers at the AMS annual meeting.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, that would be a great way. They pay your way there. You work at the meeting. And I did that. And then I was invited back to another meeting, and I wound up working for the AMS after I graduated, and worked there for 6 years at AMS headquarters. And so becoming a volunteer, I met many people in the field. I actually worked registration, so I met some of the giants, and it just paved a wide opening way for me as a volunteer there to get to know more of the folks out there. So it was really neat. And then later on, after I left AMS and became part of CoCoRaHS here, I served as the applied climb chair for several years. And one of the things as part of that committee, we always had a spot open for a student member to be on our committee. And so there's opportunities on all these different communities, whether it's radar or satellite or applied climb, TV, they're looking for students to serve as part of that committee. So those are things to think about. And again, it's another great chance to get in the door in the field.
Henry, that's such a great anecdote. And as somebody who is currently, I'm currently a chair of one of those committees, the Severe Local Storms Committee, and I also sit on another committee, AMS STAC Committee, Weather Analysis and Forecasting. We are constantly looking for good students to be a part of our committees to help shape the vision and mission and the goals of our respective areas of science within AMS. And you're exactly right. At every single one of our specialty meetings, we offer in the neighborhood of 4 to 5 student travel grants to come and visit these meetings. And, you're kind of paid there to sit and make sure everything's running okay. And you get to meet people and, again, build your professional network. That's really what it's all about.
Yep.
So that's a really great story.
Great story. Yep.
Okay, I only got, let's see here, 2 slides left. Yeah, about 2 slides left. So we're at the end. Thanks everyone for hanging on here. We do want to talk a little bit about the job search. And this may be for those of you who maybe don't have a meteorology degree, but are still interested in kind of getting into a meteorology career, because you don't have to have a meteorology degree, GS 1340, to get a career in atmospheric science, unless, of course, we're talking about something like the federal government with the GS 1340 requirements. But in terms of a job search, I always like to tell students to throw out and cast the widest net possible. And these agencies or these organizations like AMS or NWA, as a part of your membership, you get access to job boards, and you can see the postings from private companies or any federal agencies of what kind of jobs do they have open right now. And oftentimes you won't be looking for the title meteorologist. You might be looking for data analyst or energy and market analyst, insurance catastrophe modeling, transportation logistics modeling, hydrologist, environmental engineer or scientist. Sometimes they won't have meteorology in the title, but 80 to 90% of your day might be dealing with components of the atmosphere. And so don't be afraid that just because the job title doesn't say meteorologist, is, that you won't be doing things related to meteorology. A lot of times, as kind of Henry just alluded to in his story related to getting his foot in the door at AMS, sometimes it's just that. Sometimes it's harnessing one of these entry-level opportunities to get your foot in the door, and all of a sudden, that path that you thought would be linear to get from here to there ends up moving you across the country 2 or 3 times into your dream job. And so don't be afraid to cast that wide net and really leverage your professional network and even your faculty members where you got your degree, to help you find positions that are in your areas of interest. And I know Dave has a lot to say about this because he's been involved with a lot of us in trying to find jobs after we graduate.
Well, Victor, you pretty much covered it perfectly, in a sense that, again, I just wanted, when I was advising students, I would just say, don't limit yourself, or don't create a box that says this is all I can do, because I am just amazed by the opportunities for atmospheric scientists or meteorologists to come in and add value to decisions in many different fields. I think as we see it right now in our country, specifically with the insurance side of it, is that there's a critical need by insurance companies to know, as climate changes, what are the potential impacts to their bottom line. And as we, that would have been something we probably would not have thought about 20 or 30 years ago. But now we're seeing that there's great potential for us as meteorologists to add value. So again, don't limit yourself. Again, get in the door. You may not find that first position is perfect, but at least again, it broadens your network and you get an opportunity to see what's out there.
Very well said, Dave. Don't stop. Don't
Yeah.
stop once you create that first resume. Don't stop just thinking that this is going to be good enough and I'm going to get my dream job and I'm going to get in the door right away. Take opportunities to even take additional courses if possible, or other professional development opportunities. Go to these meetings, AMS, NWA, read the latest articles that are coming out, even if it's, the higher level journals that are publishing, very broad topics that are more abreast to the lay audience. Those can still be really, really good sources of understanding as to where these fields are going and where contributions are being made from various individuals. And I think the biggest thing here is just to keep pushing forward and making sure that you're putting the best possible version of yourself on paper, so that when ultimately these come to a stack and people are evaluating your portfolios, that you do have more than just a BS degree in meteorology. You have internships, you've taken additional courses, you've met with faculty, you've participated in this opportunity, that opportunity, you've gone to AMS and you've presented undergraduate research or whatever it might be. Those are always the stack of resumes, right, that get evaluated first and looked at first, versus the folks who just came out, they've kind of done the bare minimum, they've gotten the degree, they're very capable people, but for whatever reason or another, they just never took advantage of some of those other opportunities that were out there. And I think that can be said for all of us, regardless of where we're at in our career. Maybe even for somebody like me, right? Or who's been around and kind of, now I'm a tenured faculty member, but there's still opportunities for me to go and take short courses at NCAR and sharpen my skills to continue to kind of make myself competitive in the workforce. And I think that, again, this is more general knowledge versus just meteorology specific per se, but enhancing your portfolio and never stop learning is something I think we can always agree on. All right, this brings us to our last slide of lessons learned. I'm gonna let Dave take this one because if you look at that interstate road that's going towards the foothills over on the right, Dave's vehicle is way up ahead of mine, and I'm certainly following in the lane that he paved and created. But we've seen just about everything over our period of advising.
Yeah.
What's really interesting, I think Dave would agree, is how the field is changing.
Yeah.
And the skills that used to be really important are maybe not so important anymore. So Dave, I'm going to let you take this one and kind of close everything out.
Well, the important thing, someone once asked me why I enjoyed being an advisor in a meteorology program. And I was able to look people in the eyes and say, it's because, generally speaking, the majority of the students who were seeking a degree in meteorology had a huge passion. I mean, it goes back to what Henry first asked us, what got us interested in the field? There's at some point something we experienced or saw that became a big part of us. And that passion will sustain a student through a lot of difficult coursework, because I'm going to be honest with you, a degree in meteorology is something you earn, and it will not be easy. There's a lot to it that requires a lot of thought, a lot of work. And so you got to hang in there. Importantly, as you be reflective about yourself, you need to set goals. We all do. And those goals, whether it's where Victor is in his career or me now as an emeritus, those vary, but the idea is that we still set goals for ourselves, and you want to do that through that academic program into your career. Is always look at those goals, be reflective about them, and see how they change. Don't be scared that they change. Allow yourself the freedom with that journey to modify goals as you go on. As Victor mentioned, the idea of being a citizen scientist, getting involved and staying active is a great part of our lives. And most of these activities are outside the classroom. There are things that you really want to look at that, again, add value to who you are. Reflect on your experiences. As Victor said, you might do an internship with some organization and find that that's not what you want to do. Oftentimes it's the things we learn that we don't want to do that help us focus in on the things that really excite us. So again, don't take a negative activity as a bad thing. Sometimes we learn a lot about ourselves when we hit that brick wall. Being patient, I think that's always going to be a part of life. It's a hard skill for most of us, but that's important in meteorology as well. And as Victor mentioned, keep sharpening those skills. One thing that has changed dramatically in my mind is the ability to immerse yourself in technology. Technology is a broad term, but in essence, to feel very comfortable with the whole way that we communicate these days through the internet, through cell phones. It's just tremendously different, and that will continue to evolve. So make sure that you're on that train, that technology train, as it moves forward, and never give up on the journey. A lot of times you're going to get a flat tire. As I look at this picture, you're going to get a flat tire. Change the tire. Go on. You can do this. And there are people here who are going to help you in that journey. Faculty in your department, someone that you did an internship with, someone that you talked to about meteorology when you're 12 years old. As Victor said, most of us are very humbled by the fact that someone is interested in our journey. We'll sit down and help. That's what we're here to do. Meteorologists want to train more meteorologists. There's a need for a bigger pool of you. So we look forward to having you get involved. Victor, anything else?
No, that's so well said. And, I think Henry's story of how he got to where he is a beautiful example to remember that it's a journey. And that journey sometimes starts when you're in your mid-career, toward the end of your career, when you're retired. Sometimes it starts when you're coming out of high school, but it's different for everybody. And there's certainly no one size fits all model. So with that, I do apologize, we're a little bit over time, but I really hope that you all enjoyed kind of our musing, so to speak, of the advisor capacity role that we've played for numerous students in meteorology. And I do see some questions in the chat, but right now I'm going to just stop and turn it over to Henry, and maybe we can facilitate some questions.
Yeah, well, thanks, Dave and Victor. Really, what an excellent presentation. And, if you have folks in high school or at any age at this point that might be interested in a career in meteorology, it's never too old. There was a question coming here that I saw. The gentleman has left the chat now, but that he is in his early 60s. He's been a physician in medicine, and he wants to go back and get a bachelor's in meteorology. And so, it's never too old for that. What I'm going to ask at this point, folks, if you want to type your questions in, since we've gone a little long, I'm going to ask if Dave and Victor would answer those in the email for you guys. So we'll kind of end it here shortly. But thank you so much, guys, for just really clear advice and fun listening to your stories back and forth. I wish I was 18 again, just starting college. Boy, what an exciting time for all of you out there who are watching this for the first time. And you may be watching this in a high school right now, as on YouTube later on. But never give up. Follow that passion, and you'll be surprised how many things work out if you keep trying. So, well, thanks, guys. And folks, as we close out today's program, we want to let you know that our next Weather Talk webinar will be taking place in a little bit, almost 2 months, on May 16th. Claire Ransom from the World Meteorological Organization. She's going to be talking about monitoring climate change at the WMO. And we don't get a chance to talk internationally very often, but Claire will talk about that stuff. I think you'll find this a very interesting webinar. So don't miss this one. We currently have registration information up on our website. Before I forget, when signing off today, please take the survey that's going to pop up on your screen. And so until we meet again, this is Henry Regis for the rest of the CoCoRaHS team saying goodbye for now and wishing you a great springtime ahead.